So when you lose your job, the world's kind of pulled out from under you, but if your identity is gone, start asking yourself, what can I do next? How do I reinvent myself? Sitting with me right here, Teresa Kruze. She and I worked together back in the old days at Sports Desk. She and Gino Retta were my Saturday night dates. She had a huge career in broadcasting, but she moved on to other things too. She's found ways to reinvent herself. Teresa, especially in a high profile job like yours, what's the process for reinventing yourself?
I think it's having a natural curiosity for life and feeling so determined that you are going to have that life no matter what everybody else says. So if they've decided that your days are numbered, or if they've decided that it's time to say goodbye or lay you off for whatever reason, it's having that belief in yourself that, you know what, didn't work out here. Pick up the bootstraps and let's go. I think when I look back over my career, sometimes I had those decisions made for me, and other times I just pulled the ripcord.
Mm-hmm. And so what process do you go through when you're saying, I've done this, it's time to think about doing something else? How does that work? How did that work for you?
Yeah. Um, when I go back to our time together at TSN, I had 14 amazing years there. I mean, I traveled the world. I saw events and athletes that, what an era that was. And you're right, it became my identity. I stopped being, my maiden name, of course, is Teresa Hergert. I stopped being Teresa Hergert. I became Teresa Hergert of TSN. And you remember we used to have those black jackets with the wonderful logo on them, and you guys would get your ski jackets if we were doing events, and you'd be logoed as well. And I used to joke, everything's logoed, even my underwear, because we were just, it was so much a part of your identity. So I had 14 incredible years, but you know what? I always said, don't sit in that rocking chair and say, I wish I would have. So I actually pulled the ripcord after 14 years, and I decided to leave. They all thought I was crazy, and maybe I was, but I saw myself getting older, and there was so much more that I wanted to do. I wanted to get into talk television. I wanted to get back into news. I wanted to produce more things. I wanted to go back to where I started out, which was singing and acting as a young child. I wanted to go and do a few of those things. So I actually had a bit of an epiphany, and this is a true story. So it was 1999, and if you remember back to that, the whole world was supposed to end back then. We were supposed to run to the bank, and we were supposed to get our bank statements. We were supposed to bring in canned goods. All computers were just supposed to die and crash. And we were supposed to bring in bottled water because the apocalypse was coming. And it was pretty serious at the time. It sounds silly.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced that wasn't a gigantic boondoggle that we got our eyes pulled over him. But I remember it well. We had water, the bathtub was full, all of that stuff.
I know. So I was on my lunch hour from TSN. I was in the bank parking lot, and I was getting out to go and get our bank statements run off so that we had the hard copies to prove of actually how much money we actually had. So I get out of the car, and it had been a real difficult day at work. We had a lot of those, but you know what? That's okay. It just came with it. So I'm getting out of the car, and I had been toying with the idea. Our family a couple of years earlier had gone through not one, but two tragedies. And I'll tell you, when that happens, it shakes you to the core. So my husband lost two of his brothers within 6 months and 6 days. It just turned I called it the tornado of grief. And I'll tell you, for years, it just did not let up. So I was toying with, you know what? My two brother-in-laws are dead at the age of 35 and 41. What is it that you really want to do? And I thought, well, I better get rolling because, I'm going to be turning older again. So that happens. Yeah, you have birthdays, right?
If you're lucky.
Yeah, really. You said it there. So I get out, I'm in the parking lot, and this huge gust of wind, I swear to God, it just blew, and my hair's flying, and it was like, it came out of nowhere. And it felt like that wind went right through my soul. And I stood there and I went, wow. And I went, I know what I'm doing. So I went home with my bank statements. I had saved up quite a bit of money because I had been thinking about this for a while. And I talked to my husband, and he said, "Can you wait 2 weeks? I'll support you, but can you wait 2 weeks before you decide to reinvent yourself?" And he said, "If you still feel the same in 2 weeks, then you have my blessing. Go for it." And I came back after 2 weeks, and I went and handed in my notice at TSN, gave them a month's notice. Everybody was really, really shocked, but you know what? It was time for me to move on. So in that case, I pulled the rip cord. But there was other times, one other time where I got laid off of a job. So it's a loss of identity. It really is. And I remember I had one very high executive take me out for lunch after, and they said, "So what are you going to do now?" So I was listing off all these things that I was so excited. And he says, "You're a recovering celebrity." And I went, "No, what? A recovering celebrity? No, there's so much more that I've got to do." And I just thought that was really weird to be hit with. But you're right. It is a loss of your identity, because when you say, "My name is so-and-so and I work so-and-so at some place," that becomes a part of you. And to lose that, it's hard. It really is.
So, I mean, you had things you wanted to do when you left, and the things you're doing now certainly play off what you've done. You help people prepare for television, you help them get on television, you help organize events. So you have done a full reinvention.
I have, but you know what? The first thing that I did was I started putting together an idea for a talk show. I got myself an agent, and I suddenly was being booked on films and all of that sort of thing. I worked with Tony Danza, I worked with Rebecca De Mornay, Antonio Banderas. So you know what? I got back into the films. There were little itty bitty roles, but I did it, and that was a bit of a reinvention. But I knew that was going nowhere. I ended up having 3 talk shows, which was really cool. Afterwards, I rebranded myself from sports chick to back in news, because I started out in news. So I went over to 680 News on the radio to keep my skills sharp. But I really enjoyed my time there. I spent years there. I helped start 660 News on the radio. Then I was writing a newspaper column for Metro News back then. It was national. And I went and somebody said, "Why don't you turn this into a book?" Because I was doing a lot of rags to riches stories, and I loved entrepreneurship and business. So I wrote that. It became a bestseller. I went on a year-long speaking gig across Canada talking about entrepreneurship and all of that. And then I was still in television. I had another talk show, produced some series. I did a documentary. So along the way, there were a lot of things. But, I also had a gig at CP24 in Toronto, and I was really happy because I was back. And I don't know, Craig, you work in television. It gives you when you know that you're living your passion, you get that zing of excitement. Mm-hmm. And I used to get that every day that I was at CP24, and I was there 14 months, and I loved that job. And then Bell came along. 800 people were laid off, and I was shown the door. I was absolutely devastated. I still think back to that day when I was let go, all for no reason other than, "We got to cut back, and sorry, it's you."
You're a number at that point.
It was devastating because television was my life, and I thought, I'm getting back into it and all that sort of stuff. So at that point, I reinvented myself again, and I took what I had learned about entrepreneurship. I started a company. I had been doing media strategy and PR on the side for years, for 22 actually, for the family charity and business people and authors that I liked, and I did really well. So now, where I used to be on television, I put other people on now and make them successful, as well as producing events now virtually because of COVID. So, there's been a lot of different things where I've reinvented myself, but I did learn a few things along the way.
So what's your advice for people who are going through this now? They are at step 1 of, what do I do? Can I reinvent myself? Do I want to reinvent myself? From your perspective, as someone who's done it a couple times, what should they do?
I think you have to be really honest with yourself and where you are in life. And especially if you have dependents like children, at the family unit, maybe you're single and alone and you're footing all the bills. I found that it was really important to be really honest with myself about what it was that I needed to do financially. So the first time that I pulled the ripcord at TSN, I took a look at how much money I had, and I presented that to my husband. And I said, I've got X amount of dollars, so this will cover me off. So I went and got a part-time job. So if you, the first thing you have to do is, you know, it sounds trite, but you know what? Dream big. Write it down. Write it down on a piece of paper. If life were perfect and I won the lottery and I didn't have to care about money, what would it be that I would do? What are my passions? What makes me excited to leap out of bed in the morning and say, ha, I'm going for it? So that's what I did. I wrote down everything that I wanted to do. And then I took a look at that, and I took a look at the financial picture. So I had some money, but like I said, I got a part-time job, but I set these goals. I had this big thing. Just keep moving forward. Even if it's like, just, you know, there was days too where I was depressed. And, you know, sometimes, and I've heard other people, you can't get out of bed. So, you know, even if somebody was telling me that they couldn't get out of bed and they started just doing one little thing. So she put one foot out of the covers. That's how bad this poor lady's depression was. So it was one foot and then one leg on the floor. And then the next day it was a couple more, but literally, like, you know, she could look after herself and everything. But in order to put the feet on the floor to walk over to the computer and actually maybe start doing something, or the phone, was really mind-boggling and awful. So there's a lot of depression that goes on. You know what? I found too, because I've been through tragedy. I've been through job change. I've been through a lot of different stuff. Life is one big, huge roller coaster, and a lot of people know about that. There's times where you're on top of the world and you just think, wow, I feel so amazing. I love life. Everything is great. And then you start coming down and you're at the bottom of the coaster again. But you know what? We're going to come back up that coaster, and pretty soon you'll be back up here feeling great again. So, you know, I think write everything down. Be very realistic with your financial situation. If you've got to go and get a couple of part-time jobs to float that new venture that it is that you want to do, or go after that perfect job, and maybe it's going to take you a little bit of time, maybe you need extra training, then, you know, be thoughtful and mindful about your financial picture and how that puzzle works for it to come together. And then every day, just keep moving forward. And you know what? Don't let anybody tell you that you can't, because you can. You can. It takes a lot of work, a lot of determination, but you can. And the only person that can tell you you can't is you. So stop the mirror stuff. But, you know, like, we can smile and laugh, Craig, but you're right. There's a lot of people out there that are hurting right now. And you know what? I've been there too. I've been in pits of despair where I didn't think I'd be able to get out of them. And there was times like when I was driving home from CP24 and I just thought, there goes my whole career. I worked so long for that job and I loved that job. And now what am I going to do? So, you know what? It does pass. And pretty soon we start putting the pieces of that puzzle back together again. And you know what? Our careers are wonderful, and sometimes they don't go the way that we want to, but there's other things out there too that we can do that bring us as much joy and passion. There is. We just have to find them.
So sort of the checklist is figure out what you want to do, dream big.
Oh, yeah.
Figure out how to take care of your finances while you're dreaming big. Make your plan. Execute. Every day, execute a little bit, and be nice to yourself.
Yeah, self-care, wellness, that's huge. And you know, network as well, because you'd be surprised how many people out there have a story that maybe they haven't really talked about. But network and stay close with your friends and family. They're not being nosy. They care about you. And you know, they reach out and talk to them. They want to know how you are. And sometimes when you network too, sometimes things land in your lap and you're going, wow, where did this opportunity come from? You know, a friend of mine got laid off and he put something up on Facebook and I could use his editing services. So I called him up, and now Connor and I have done 5, 6 different shows. I've got him working on another 3 or 4 that are coming up, and he's starting to get a lot of work just because he posted something on Facebook saying, just got laid off. Does anybody need an editor? Oh, you bet we do. So you never know. Like, you just keep networking and put it out there. And you know what? Are we going to have regrets with some of the choices that we made? Oh, yeah. But you know what? Just always remember, life isn't perfect. and neither are we. But there will be another day where that sun comes out in your life. And so it's just important every day, keep just moving forward, even if it's just getting down to the computer and sending a couple of emails or reaching out to a few people or joining that networking group or whatever. But just keep moving forward. And eventually you're going to come back up to the top of that roller coaster.
So where you are now, Teresa has been, and she is in a different place. And she just gave you a little blueprint of how to do that. Teresa, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with all of us.
My pleasure. My life isn't perfect either, but every day's still sometimes a struggle. But you know what? We just keep moving forward. And I'm glad I've been able to share my story a little bit. And you know what? Reach out. We're all here, and we've been there.
Yeah, people want to help you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa.
My pleasure.